My mother's words still echo in my head. You can't afford something like this. Just let your brother handle it. She said it so casually, as though it was an unshakable fact about me, that I'd always be the one struggling, never the one providing. It wasn't the first time she had underestimated me, but this time was different. Because what she didn't know was that everything she doubted me for had quietly transformed into the very thing that would surprise her. 4 years I had been grinding in silence, working late nights, taking risks, pouring every ounce of myself into a dream no one believed in. I didn't talk about it much, not because I was ashamed, but because I was building something that required proof, not promises. When Dad's birthday came around, I wanted it to be unforgettable. He deserved more than a cake at home. He deserved an evening of elegance, laughter, and pride. I chose the most prestigious restaurant in town. My mother nearly laughed when I mentioned it. Do you even know how much that place costs? Stop embarrassing yourself. The night of the dinner arrived. My parents walked in dressed sharp, still whispering about whether I had borrowed money to pull this off. I held the door for them, smiling, keeping my secret close. And then, just as we stepped inside, the moment I'd been waiting for unfolded. "Good evening, sir," the maitre d' said warmly, turning his gaze toward me. "Welcome back, Mr. Khan." The staff lined up in subtle recognition, each offering a nod of respect. My mother froze. My father blinked twice. And before anyone could speak, the manager stepped forward. "Your private dining hall is ready, sir. Happy birthday to your father." The room fell into silence. My mother's disbelief hung heavy in the air, her doubts cracking like glass under the weight of truth. I looked at my father. His eyes were watering, not from confusion but from pride. In that moment he knew. This wasn't just about dinner. This was about years of sacrifice finally being seen. I raised my glass later that night, not just for my dad's birthday, but for something larger. For every dreamer who's been doubted, dismissed, or told they're not enough. Because here's the truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation while you're building. You don't need validation in the process. The only thing that matters is that one day, your work speaks louder than their doubts. And when it does, the same people who told you you can't will be the ones standing in awe when the staff greets you, not as a guest but as the owner. My mother's words still echo in my head. You can't afford something like this. Just let your brother handle it. She said it with that sharp, dismissive tone that pierced deeper than any insult. It wasn't just about dinner. It was about the way she had always seen me. In her eyes, I was the one who never measured up, the one who always came up short. No matter how hard I worked, she carried this picture of me as someone fragile, incapable, and unworthy of carrying real responsibility. It stung because it wasn't just a comment on money. It was a comment on my worth. I remember standing there trying to smile through it, pretending her words didn't shake me. But inside it burned. I thought of all the late nights I had spent building a life she never saw, the sacrifices I made when everyone assumed I was wasting time. She never asked how I was doing, never noticed the small victories that had been adding up into something bigger. In that moment, she wasn't just doubting whether I could afford one dinner. She was doubting who I had become. What she didn't know was that I had already proven her wrong, quietly, day by day. Every time she dismissed me, I used it as fuel. Every time she said I couldn't, I whispered to myself, "Watch me." But hearing her say it out loud before such an important night, it was like reopening an old wound I thought had healed. And still I stayed quiet, because I knew the truth would reveal itself soon enough. 4 years I had been grinding in silence, working jobs that barely paid enough to cover rent, yet pouring every extra penny into my vision. I kept my head down while others spent their weekends at parties or vacations, and I stayed up under the dim glow of my laptop screen, learning, planning, and building. There were nights when exhaustion pushed me to the edge, when I questioned if any of it was worth it, when the rejection emails piled up and the doubts in my own mind grew louder than the doubts from my family. But I pressed on, because something inside me refused to accept that this was all life had to offer. I didn't brag about my progress, not because I wasn't proud, but because I believed in letting the results speak louder than empty promises. People around me thought I was struggling. Some even pitied me, but I never corrected them. They saw the surface, and I let them. Deep down, I knew that what I was creating was worth the years of being underestimated. I wanted to build something solid, something no one could take away with a dismissive word. In silence, I laid each brick of my dream, taking risks that terrified me, investing in myself when no one else believed it was wise, failing and starting again. My victories were quiet but powerful, each one stacking on top of the last. And as I stood on the edge of that birthday dinner plan, I carried with me the weight of those silent triumphs. They didn't know it yet, but everything they doubted me for had already transformed into the very foundation of the surprise I was about to reveal. When Dad's birthday came around, I knew it had to be different. He was the kind of man who rarely asked for anything, who sacrificed more than anyone ever acknowledged, and I wanted him to have a night that showed just how much he meant to me. No cheap shortcuts, no rushed celebrations. This one had to feel special, unforgettable. I searched for the right place, the kind of place where the atmosphere alone whispered respect, where the food carried not just flavor but elegance. And I found it in the most prestigious restaurant in the city, a place people whispered about but rarely set foot in. When I told my mother my plan, her reaction was instant and sharp. She laughed under her breath like the idea itself was absurd. "Do you even know how much that place costs? Don't embarrass yourself. Let your brother handle it." The words rolled out of her mouth so easily, as if she was shielding me from humiliation, when in reality, she was reinforcing the belief that I couldn't possibly provide something of worth. My brother smirked like he agreed, as if I was just playing out of my league. Still, I didn't argue. I didn't explain that I wasn't just booking a table. I was making arrangements for something much bigger. Every time they doubted me, I simply nodded, as though their disbelief had no power over me anymore. The truth was, the dinner wasn't just for Dad. It was for me too. A chance to step out from the shadow of their doubts and show them, without saying a word, that I had become someone they never imagined. The reservation wasn't just a seat at a table. It was the beginning of a revelation. The night finally arrived, and I could feel the weight of anticipation pressing against my chest as we pulled up to the restaurant. The grand entrance glowed softly under the warm lights, the kind of place that made people slow down just to admire it. My parents walked beside me, whispering in low tones, my mother still convinced I had somehow borrowed money or begged for a discount. My father, quiet as always, just looked curious. Though I could tell he was bracing himself for a bill he thought I couldn't possibly handle. The doors opened, and in that instant everything shifted. The maitre d' spotted me and his entire demeanor changed, straightening his posture, offering a smile that carried familiarity and respect. "Good evening, sir. Welcome back, Mr. Khan." His voice was warm, deliberate, the kind of tone reserved for someone important. Behind him, the staff lined up subtly, nodding and greeting me with recognition. My mother froze mid-step, her hand tightening around her purse. My father's brows furrowed in surprise, and my brother blinked like he had just missed a punchline to a joke. Before they could ask, the manager himself stepped forward with a graceful bow of respect. "Your private dining hall is prepared, sir. And a very happy birthday to your father." The silence that followed was thick, almost heavy. My mother's disbelief was written all over her face, her lips parted but no words forming. My father's eyes glistened, not with confusion, but with pride that he had been holding back for years. In that moment no explanation was needed. No defense, no argument, no reminder of the nights I'd spent working or the sacrifices I'd made. The truth revealed itself in the simplest way. The staff greeted me not as a guest, but as the owner. I lifted my glass that night, watching the way my father's smile stretched wider than I'd seen in years. He looked around the room, soaking in the atmosphere, the laughter, the way the waitstaff moved with precision to make his evening seamless. My mother sat quietly, her usual sharp remarks absent, her eyes darting between me and the staff as though trying to piece together how all of this had happened. She didn't realize that this wasn't luck or chance. It was years of grit, sacrifice, and silent battles finally standing in front of her in undeniable form. For me, it wasn't about proving her wrong, though part of me savored the silence of her disbelief. It was about showing my father what he had taught me without words: resilience, patience, and the courage to keep going when no one else believed. That night was a gift for him, but it was also a declaration for me. I was no longer the underestimated child who couldn't afford things. I was the man who built something real, something lasting, something no one could take away. The irony struck me as I looked across the table. How often we allow the voices of doubt, especially from those closest to us, to shape the way we see ourselves. If I had listened to my mother, I might have played small forever, convincing myself that her version of me was the truth. But instead I chose to let my actions speak. And when the staff addressed me with respect that couldn't be faked, when my father's eyes shone with pride, I knew I had rewritten the story. Not just for them but for myself. That night reminded me of something powerful. Success doesn't need to be announced. It doesn't need applause while you're building. It simply waits, quietly, until the moment it can no longer be hidden. And when it finally shows, it demands the kind of respect that no amount of doubt can ever erase.